Hey there, everyone, and welcome to Pour and Explore, a wine, food, and travel podcast. I'm your host, Nick Elliott, the wine guy. I'd love to be your go-to guide for all things wine, food, and the amazing places they take us. Here on Pour and Explore, we'll sip, savor, and wander through the exciting world of wine, discuss incredible cuisines, and uncover the stories behind unforgettable destinations. Each week, I'll bring you lively conversations with wine experts, chefs, travel pros, and fellow enthusiasts. We'll share practical tips, hilarious tales, and plenty of inspiration to fuel your next adventure. So grab a glass, pull up a chair, and join me as we pour, explore, and celebrate the good life. Let's dive in. Hey, flavor adventurers and fellow explorers. Welcome back to Pour and Explore, the podcast where wine meets wanderlust, and every episode is a passport to something delicious. I'm your host, Nick Elliott, certified sommelier, former winemaker, classically trained chef. I'm also a travel addict and your go-to guide for turning great sips and great trips into unforgettable stories. I'm so glad you're here. Now, if you've been hanging out with me for a while, you know that this show is as much about the why behind what we drink and where we go as it is about the what. That is really, really important to me. We go beyond the label, we go beyond the itinerary, and we get to the real juice, pardon the pun. The people, the passion, and the magic of discovery. Today's guest is someone who embodies that spirit of discovery beautifully. She's also a solo travel. She's a digital entrepreneur. She's someone who calls herself, and I love this, perpetually curious. Angie Saint-YI is the founder of the Flexitarian Digest. It's a platform that helps others travel more mindfully, plan smarter, and embrace the joy of doing things their own way. And she's got stories. I can't wait for you to hear them. And so many great stories. In today's episode, we're going to dive into how solo travel became a form of self-care in motion. It's really very cool. The power of planning your own adventure, even if it's your first time. Why travel doesn't have to be expensive, and while hostels aren't always what you think they are, and how Angie turned her passion for exploration into a creative business that makes real impact. I'm going to be honest here, folks. This conversation lit me up. Angie reminded me that travel isn't always about the destination. Sometimes it's about the decision. The decision to say yes to yourself. Whether it's booking the ticket, trying that strange looking street food, or just carving out a space in your life to do something different. That is what we're going to get into today. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the behind the scenes business talk, how she bootstrapped her first ebook, where she finds her inspiration. We're going to talk about how marketing your own brand is as much about being human as it is about strategy. Plus, if you're a tennis lover, we're going to talk a little bit about Wimbledon and how to subvert the system a little bit when it comes to enjoying that sports great right there. Converted lavatory coffee shops and how TikTok and Substack might just be the future of storytelling. This is one of those episodes that feels like sipping a wine with a good friend and getting inspired all over again. I'm so excited to bring it to you. So whether you're walking the dog, pouring a glass of Pinot, or scrolling through cheap flights on a Tuesday night, this episode is for you. All right, Angie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you and I spoke the other day, and we had a great conversation. Hopefully, you think so too. And I
A
definitely wanted
plus.
to have perfect. I wanted to have you on the show and talk about some of the very, very cool things that you're doing. You got a lot of stuff going on. You're not literally in Tuscany right now, but it looks like you are. But you make it a habit of traveling the world. So I and my guests would love to hear a little bit more about what you're doing. So I definitely appreciate you being on here today. So let's talk about travel. This show is all about wine. We talk about food. We talk about travel. And, for me, travel is the thing that brings all of those things together. It's going out and seeing something new, experience a different thing, and having new food and having new wine and having new drinks and meeting new people. All of these super fun things that you get to do while you're on the road. What inspired your love of travel? And do you remember the moment that you decided to take your first trip?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things for me, like within travel. As you mentioned, just the collective of everything that travel brings, like, being able to try new foods, like meet new people, experience new cultures. But I think especially the biggest thing that I found throughout my traveling, it's really self-care in motion, just being able to get out of your comfort zone and especially doing solo travel. It's the case you don't have to be thinking like, "Oh my god, someone wants to do this and someone wants to do this." You can actually just tap into things that interest you, that, like, really light you up, and I just think it's so beautiful just to be able to, like, pour into yourself like that, and then just be able to have memories for a lifetime. And in terms of my first trip, I've pretty much been traveling since I was, like, little, because we would always take family trips to Canada because I have family that lives in Montreal. So I would always be going on road trips to Montreal, or we lived in Delaware. So we would actually go like up and down the East Coast. And I was doing a lot of road trips early on, but it's really the case. I hate being in cars for more than a couple hours. So I'm like, yeah, like these road trips are fun, but I kind of want to be on planes and I want to go to other places. So I've been really blessed over 10 years of solo travel to actually be able to go both domestically and internationally to different places.
That's fantastic. I love the idea, and this is the first time I've heard this, using travel as a form of self-care. I think that's a beautiful sentiment. I think it's a beautiful way to think about it. I talk on the show all the time about how important travel is, not only for your psyche and your body, but to get out there and have new experiences, to get out of your bubble, your comfort zone, if you will, and so on. But to look at all of those things as caring for yourself, I just absolutely love that notion. Absolutely love that notion. You talk about the fact that you've been traveling, since you were a child. Tell us, how do you think travel has changed over the years for you personally and maybe professionally? How has it changed in your eyes?
I mean, and thinking about like travel as a child, it was
Hmm.
just something that was part of my everyday, pretty much seeing like the same kind of things. And I'm just like, okay, like, yeah, like you buckle up and you go on the trips. Like you're not really thinking about much like when you're a kid. But then as like I was in college and like actually traveling on my own, then it did get different because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to the same places all the time. Or if I am going to the same country, I don't want to do the same things. I always like want to be looking for something different to do, something to dig my teeth into accordingly, or I don't know, like if it is something within my overall interest range, like how many different things can I do in that interest range? And I think it's very, very interesting as well. Like when I first started solo traveling, I felt like travel was a lot cheaper. Like I could get more bang for my buck, even though like sometimes you would still get dinged on exchanges in certain countries. I still
Hmm.
felt like you could still do a lot of activities, but now whether it's a flight, whether it's like an accommodation or even an activity, you have to be more mindful of like, okay, I can't maybe do like 10 different activities. I really have to dwindle it down to like maybe two or three, or maybe I can't stay at this super nice hotel, but maybe I can opt for like a really nice boutique hostel or like a Sonder property still get like a great experience, but I'm not breaking the bank on my accommodation or my flights or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. As in most things, travel, you do have to be budget conscious. There is travel available for everyone. I'm not going to say on every budget, but if it means, going to the next county over, or going to the big city in your state or something like that, I would hope that we would all be able to find, a way to be able to get out there and explore. And you're absolutely right. The budget does have a huge part in making those plans and something that we need to be conscious of. I definitely want to do a show sometime in the near future talking about building a budget around travel and what that might look like. So I've got some travel planners who are going to be coming on and talk about that. And I do want to talk about travel planning here in a second, but I think it's an important thing to talk about because you and I, we both love to travel, but our backgrounds in travel, I think, are a lot different. You've been traveling since you were a young child. I didn't leave the state of Pennsylvania. I didn't get on a plane until I was in my mid 20s. So for me, travel was not really a part of my upbringing. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is now, I do go out and I travel the world. I'm going to France next month. I'm going to Germany at the end of the year. I'm going to New Zealand. Yeah, very exciting. And if you want to learn more about my wine trips, hit me up in the comments as you're listening to this. I've got some very cool wine trips coming up. But anyway, I digress. But the reason that I'm saying it is because when I talk to people about travel, I do get a lot of pushback on they're afraid to travel, or they're not sure if they can do it, or if they can afford it, or all of these things, these feelings that we have inside to keep us from doing something. And just to make that contrast between your experience with travel and my experience with travel is I just had to bite that bullet because a friend of mine said, "Hey, could I come out to a family wedding in Salt Lake City?" And I'm living in Philadelphia, and I'd never been on a plane before. It's like, oh my goodness. And I just had to, rip off that Band-Aid. And then next thing I
Right.
know, I was in Utah, and it's been nonstop travel ever since, for a good, 20 plus years. So, if you don't think that you can do it, you can do it. That's the point that I'm trying to make to the audience out there. So I really love that. So let's talk a little bit about travel planning. You started a little thing called the Flexitarian Digest, and that is your foray into helping people plan trips. You're still getting that off the ground. I want to talk a little bit about that, and I want to talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial experience with that as well, because as the world changes, things are becoming a little more. I did an episode a couple weeks ago that hopefully the audience heard that had to do with being a digital nomad. And I talked to Jasmine, and she's living in Albania now and having a great time. And she's a great entrepreneur and so on. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that with you as well. Making travel plans for yourself and for other people. Talk a little bit about that for me.
Yeah, so it really started, I would probably say in 2015, the actual travel planning for myself, because I wanted to go to a tennis event in Cincinnati to see my favorite player, Roger Federer. And I had
Mhm.
really like never planned any trips for myself before, but I'm like, oh my God, this guy is really, really hard to see at an affordable price, but he loved playing in Cincinnati. So I basically was just like, okay, I'm putting boots to the ground and I started to plan. So I found like my flights. I was very active on Twitter at that time. So I linked up with some tennis people. I got my accommodation sorted, and then the activity was just going to be going to the tournament. So that was really like my first official travel planning experience from start to finish. And the event was amazing. And I felt like after that, I could have just been like, okay, I finally saw my favorite player. It could all end here. But it was just so amazing, like, to actually get over that hump of like, well, like maybe I do have to go to an agency or I do have to like do this kind of thing to be able to go on trips. But just getting that empowerment of doing it on my own, I was like, oh my God, I can do so much more. Like even
Mhm.
outside of tennis, I can just experience all the things. So from that trip on, then I planned a trip to go to Canada on my own. And then in 2017, that's when I made like my first big international trip to London, and I planned everything from start to finish. So it was really after that London trip, I was like, the sky is the limit. Like if I want to plan anything anywhere, all I have to do is just like get on the computer, tool the things, and then that's it.
Fantastic. You started maybe spun off a little side hustle, a little side business, from this, and you're building that up. As an entrepreneur, starting something from scratch, because I've done it myself in multiple businesses. My wife has done it for herself in multiple businesses, so I know what goes into it. But I'd love to hear your take on what it takes to start a business, from that entrepreneurial side. Give our listeners a couple little bullet points of what you found most important of getting your business off the ground.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the biggest things was just like investing in like any kind of certification course. So like whether that's like a digital marketing course, a business course, just to get those base framework things of being able to, go through the process of like what the customer journey is like, kind of narrowing down like what your niche is going to be, like what you want your brand to be like, your voice to be like. Then once you have like those courses and everything and the certifications there, then it's really just about getting to work on the actual creation of things. And I think what can stop a lot of people is, oh my God, I have to pay like $100 a month for an email list, or I have to pay like $200 a month for website maintenance, or if I want to make courses, like I have to pay all of this money for a course platform. But for my experience, it was the case after I got my digital marketing certification for making the course for my travel planning. I actually did it all for free on Canva.
Wow.
Like I just took a 2-week trial just to get the premium features, and I made like a whole ebook. I think it's about 30, 40 pages all on Canva, and then I was able to sell that. And then for the actual selling platform, there's plenty of free platforms out there. You just pay like a little transaction fee for like any sales that you make. So
Right.
essentially, that's free. And then for your email list, since you're just starting out, you don't want to be paying all of this money if you don't have any leads. So platforms like ConvertKit is amazing for just starting out because they have a free plan. And then once you start to gain that traction, then you can start to upgrade. But it doesn't make any sense to be throwing all this money all over the place like when you don't have the leads in your pipeline. So you want to start small, plenty of free resources out there, and then just build up as you start to build more of your clout and your pipeline.
Yeah, that's super great advice. And I completely agree with you. Being able to educate yourself further, I mean, obviously, someone's not going to go into a business if they don't know at least a little bit about it, or at least I would hope not. But going and taking a course, I think, is an amazing idea. There are so many online courses nowadays for everything in the world, and I would give the advice of making sure that you're vetting the people who are putting these courses on, making sure that they're accredited and they are an expert in their field, because you want to learn from an expert. You don't want to learn from someone who's just doing it to have a good time. So
Right.
that's wonderful advice. And as far as the software goes, I completely agree with you. Canva is an amazing tool. I cannot recall how much it is per month right now, but it's such a powerful, intuitive design tool for everything, and not just graphic design. They've got AI built into it, which can help you write and so on. So it's a hugely, hugely powerful platform that I definitely recommend that you invest in if you're starting a business, 100%. And then, I mean, we couldn't have this conversation with talking about AI now as well, ChatGPT, et cetera, et cetera. It has become a big part of my business. It will become a bigger part of my business, moving forward. And that is a great way to create documents, to create pictures, to create ideas, having a conversation with ChatGPT, just going back and forth. And I've found that it sparked something in my brain. Oh, yeah, I hadn't even thought about that before. And so on. And I've integrated those things into my business. So awesome advice, Angie. I really, really appreciate that. Let's switch gears a little bit. You mentioned London a minute ago, and I know that you
Mhm.
are a big fan of the United Kingdom and in particular London. So give us some background into your travels to London and some of the favorite things you've seen and done.
Yeah, so I've actually been a fan of London probably since I was a preteen because a lot of the movies were like shot in various parts of the United Kingdom. And I was like, oh my God, like it just looks so cool and so chic. So I want to go there someday. And then, of course, the tennis connection as well. One of
Hmm.
the oldest and biggest tournaments is held there, Wimbledon. So I was like, oh my God, like, yes, I have to go and get myself a PIMS. I have to take a picture with like the infamous strawberries and cream. So when I finally got to go in 2017, I did go to Wimbledon and I got to sit on center court. And it was
Wow.
amazing because I didn't have to spend like $2,000, $3,000. Like I queued overnight in this huge field that they have. Like you set up a tent, you sleep there, then you wake up in the morning and then they like pass out what they call cue cards. And if you're
Hmm.
within like the first 500 people in the queue, then you can get like, so they have center court, what they call number one court and number two court, which are like the main show courts. And if you choose like a center court ticket and you get up to the ticket booths, instead of spending like $3,000 for like a front row seat, you can just pay like maybe 150, $200, and you cannot do that anywhere else in the world. Ah, chef's kiss, so good.
You heard it here first,
So,
folks. Get into the queue at Wimbledon. If you're a tennis fan, you got to do that. Absolutely.
yeah, so like Wimbledon and pretty much anything that you want to do in the city, like it's there. So they have amazing parks, like multitudes of parks that you can just go to and just like chill out, people watch, do different kind of things. A million restaurants, coffee shops, probably some of like the best coffee that I've had anywhere in London. There is one coffee shop I particularly love. It's kind of like a small chain in London, but this particular location, it's actually a converted washroom. So like when you go down the stairs, you can still see like all the like toilet fixtures and everything, but it's really beautiful like how they set it up. And I'm just like, wow, that's being so resourceful. Like this used to be kind of like a dungeon washroom, and now it's like a full-on coffee shop with a full menu, beautiful food, and the people were absolutely amazing there. So I don't think I've ever had a bad time in London. I just can't be there long enough because it does start to get very, very expensive after you're there for like a couple weeks.
Yeah, yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, just like any big city, we're going to be in Paris for about 5 days before we head off to Bordeaux next month, and it can get expensive, absolutely. So be mindful of. I loved your idea earlier of, staying in a hostel, or something like that. If you're into that kind of thing, you can certainly do that. I'll be traveling with my wife, so I will not be staying in a hostel for this trip. But yeah, I mean, like we talked about earlier, just be mindful of your budget. Going to London is just like going to New York or Miami where you live or San Diego where I live. There's everything to do there. There is no shortage of activity in those places. So there's a little something for everyone. And I absolutely agree. It's an amazing place. Let's talk a little more about travel. You have a background in marketing that I found out when we were talking the other day. Do you use your background in marketing at all to help you with your travel planning? Does it speak to your decisions in any way as far as travel goes?
More so like if I'm actively promoting something, like whether it's on social media or I think just in general conversations as well, because you're always just meeting different people. And I kind of feel like in this day and age, like marketing just kind of finds its way in general conversation because
Yeah.
whether we're scrolling on social media, like whether you see a billboard somewhere, whether you see like an ad on a bus, like we're just inundated with so much information. So you're always being marketed to. And I just think
Mhm.
it's interesting too, like just the notion of like whether it's a big brand or just kind of how you carry yourself as your own brand. Like, is it the case that you're more extroverted? Are you more introverted? Are you a budget traveler? Are you a bougie traveler? That all contributes to your brand. And it just makes for like some really interesting conversations too, especially like if you're putting yourself out there for, I don't know, like blind activities or something or group trips, you're meshing with a lot of different people. And I just think it's really cool to be able to have those different kind of conversations and see how things converge.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And, as you were talking, all I could think to myself is, scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, is another great example. And, on those platforms, not only are we being sold to, in most cases, it's either politics or someone's trying to sell you something, on those platforms, but it's done in a very realistic, is a word I could use, very personable, personal way.
Mhm.
It seems very familiar that the way they're doing it. A friend of mine introduced me to, I didn't even know it had a term, attached to it, user generated content. So he started talking to me about that. And I'm like, are you telling me that I can just get on the internet and talk about wine and, say, here, you need to buy this and someone's going to buy it? That's crazy, you know. But seeing it more and more and more, on the internet, particularly those two platforms that I mentioned, I mean, it totally turns the marketing and advertising world on its head. From, 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, this stuff wasn't happening. And I think it's going to change the way the world consumes moving forward, if it hasn't already, which I think it has. And we're talking wine, food, travel, cars, whatever you can possibly think of, this is the way that we are selling to one another now, is through those things. So for someone like you, having that forethought to make sure that you are selling in a very conversational way, to use your
Mhm.
words, I think it's an amazing way to go. And, for someone who's been in sales, for many, many years, I couldn't agree with you more. But for me, it's always been selling the story, but in a very transactional way, as
Mhm.
opposed to a very just conversational way. I think you're right on, and I absolutely love that. You described yourself in some of your social media posts as perpetually curious, and I definitely dig that. How do you feed that curiosity on a daily basis? What gets you going? What gets your juices flowing?
I don't know, like, it feels it's kind of a catch-22, like, my mind is never turned off, really, so I can really be motivated by, like, the smallest thing, something that I see on social media, like, something that I just happen to prepare for myself when I'm at home, like, if I'm walking along and I just feel like a cool breeze on my face or, like, just, like, the kiss of the sun, like, that brings inspiration, and that's why I always say, like, I'm perpetually curious because I don't really close myself off to a lot of things. I like to invite things in because that keeps things fun and interesting, especially in these times where you can just be so downtrodden by the political climate or people's energies, like whether it's like positive or negative. So kind of just to be able to feed my soul and my mind with something that makes me go like, wait, like I want to learn more about that. Or it just like makes me super, super excited. I think that's the zest of life in the end.
That's absolutely perfect. And again, I couldn't agree more. We touched on it a little bit earlier, getting out of your comfort zone. I hate to keep using that term, but I think it best describes, what we're talking about. And getting out of your comfort zone can either be physically, actually your person being in another place, or mentally, emotionally getting out of that space that you're locked in, and thinking a new way, or trying to understand someone else's point of view, things like that. That's a big thing, as we know nowadays, is we don't necessarily understand one another's point of view, in a global way. So I think what you're saying is absolutely important. Take Angie's advice, everyone. Be perpetually curious, get out there, learn something new, read a new book, watch a new TV show, get on a plane, fly to London, and have a great time. Yes, absolutely. All right. So, speaking of curiosity, obviously you're passionate about a lot of things, which I
Mhm.
love. Multi-passionate people, are always very curious, and in my experience, very happy as well, because they're always on to the next thing. What's a passion or interest that you haven't explored yet that you're looking to do so?
Ooh, I probably would say, like, I've done a little bit of writing, like, for my own blog, but maybe, like, more professional writing in terms of, like, actually, like, writing travel articles for magazines or being, like, a guest contributor for, like, a company or so. Because I think generally in the travel realm, it can kind of get to be the same kind of thing. It's like, "Oh, yeah, like, this destination is amazing, like, go here," or, like, "Try this," and it gets to be a little bit cookie cutter, and especially for kind of like a very flex traveler like I am, like, I wanna see, like, some more stories, especially, like, I always tell people, "Hey, you don't have to be afraid of hostels. It doesn't have to be the case that you have to be in a 18 bunk bed well, bunk room. You can
Right.
actually enjoy like a full private room to yourself with a private bathroom, and you can be as social or as not social as you want to, just kind of like bringing like different parts of travel into the conversation just to make it more accessible for people too, because I think that always feeds into the fear. They're like, well, I don't have tens of thousands of dollars to go to Turks and Caicos or to take these vacations to Mexico and like be at these resorts. And that's totally fine. You can do other things. It's just like you actually have to almost see the representation of it and just have the tools to be able to customize an experience that actually works for you, your budget, your interest, instead of just having to be put in like this bin, or this bin.
Sure, absolutely. Have you heard of the app called Substack?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've only scratched the surface, of that app right now, but I think it's exactly what you're talking about. It's a place where people go and write. I mean, it's a blog. You can definitely say that, or
Mhm.
it's a blog based, app, and they obviously have a website and everything. And again, I've just scratched the surface, so I'm no expert, by any means, but for what you're talking about. I think that Substack would be a great place to do exactly that, is, write down your, essentially a public journal, if you will. I think that would be super cool. And I know I would love to read that. Most definitely.
Yeah.
Let's start wrapping things up here. I would love to hear from someone who's been all over the world, and it doesn't necessarily have to be travel, but what advice would you give to someone who's craving a big change in their life? What would you tell someone who feels a little stuck or unsure where to go next?
Yeah, so I think probably 2 things that really helped me is, 1, take a breath, take a beat, and see, like, what is it exactly that you wanna do? Like, maybe, like, 1 or 2 things that you want to bring about in that change, like, whether it's writing it down. I will admit, like, I openly talk to myself because it just helps me to kind of let things go and almost sticks more, like, when you hear it, for
Yep.
me, compared to writing it down. And then 2, like, once you kind of establish, like, those 1 or 2 things that you wanna do, just start taking these small steps to achieve it. I think especially for a type A like me, like, I want it to happen, like, right now, like, I wanna be taking, like, 2 big steps instead of 5 little steps to get there,
Sure.
but I think it's always really good to just take those smaller steps, because as you're taking those small steps, you can kind of like give yourself a break. Like if there is a setback or so, then you know that you're still moving forward in a positive way. And then you just learn so much more too. So like when you finally get to that goal, you can reflect back and say like, hey, like I learned all of these other things. So when I'm trying to reach goal 3 or 4, it gets to be a little bit easier because you have all the knowledge gained from taking those smaller steps.
I think it's fantastic advice. And again, I couldn't agree more with you. And, I love the external processing, that you're talking about, in the coaching world. That's what they call that, is external processing. And, being able to say it out loud, and then you're hearing yourself say it. And, it gives you more motivation, not only to do it because you're saying it out loud, but it also helps retain that in your memory as well. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. Angie, I can't thank you enough for your time today. It's been an awesome conversation, a great way to talk to folks about, just get out there and have a great time. That's what life is about. We're only here, I mean, depending on what you believe, we're only here for one cycle. you know, Try to enjoy it, try to get out there, have a good time. And again, whether it's going to the next county over or to the next continent over, you're going to get something out of it, travel wise. Try some new food, try some new wine if you're a wine drinker, just get out there and have a great time. And I couldn't be more appreciative of you being on the show today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, friends, how is that for a shot of inspiration? Another big thanks to Andrew for joining me on the show today and sharing her stories, her heart, and her hustle. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling ready to pull up Google Flights right now and just go somewhere, anywhere, and maybe take a journal and maybe not telling anyone I'm going. That's a possibility as well. I'm just going to pour into myself a little, the way Angie so beautifully put it. Whether it's solo travel, starting a side hustle, or simply shaking things up in your own routine, I hope this episode reminded you that you don't need permission to go after the things that light you up. You just need curiosity, you need a little courage, of course, and maybe a wine guide, me, right here, who's cheering you on from behind the mic. If you love today's episode, please make sure you subscribe, make sure you give me a rating, share it with your favorite travel buddy or that friend who keeps saying, I wish I could take a trip like that. This is your sign. Here's your sign. Hit him with this episode, please. And if you want to follow Angie's adventures, you can find her on Instagram at the Flexitarian Digest. Give her a follow, check out her digital guides, and get ready to add some new pins to your travel map. As for me, I've got more Pour and Explore episodes coming your way. We're making more wine, more food, more places, more people who are changing the way we see the world, one sip at a time. I really love doing this, and I'm so glad that you are here with me today. Until next time, my friends, keep wondering and keep wandering. Cheers, take care, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Pour and Explore. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your stories, and your questions, so you can drop me a line at cheers@thewineguy.vin. That's cheers@thewineguy.vin. Or let's connect on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. Grab those links on my website at thewineguy.vin. Until next time, let's keep wondering and wandering. Cheers, everyone.